Hello and welcome to the Game Theory Podcast. I'm your host, Sam Vecenie. Today, Bryce Simon joins me. We're going to talk about the Lakers' Mark Williams deal being rescinded. We're going to talk about contender rankings, post-trade deadline. How would we rank and stack all of these teams now that they've made their final moves of the season? But first, let's hit the music.
They do have a timeout. Decide not to use it. Way downtown.
Bang! Bang! What's this gonna be? Wow! Are you kidding me?
Hello and welcome to the Game Theory Podcast. I'm your host, Sam Vecenie. But if you watch the tape, what you will see completely orchestrated this game. Bryce, what's going on, buddy?
What's up, Sam? How are you doing? I don't know if my voice sounds any better, but I know I feel better than I did last week. After a week of feeling miserable and weak and low on energy, finally felt a little bit like myself today. So still might get a coughing spree at some point in this episode. Maybe my voice wavers here or there, but definitely feel much, much better. And I know this stuff is going around all over. So shout out and thoughts with everybody dealing with any sort of sickness across our listener and viewership over this time of the flu, COVID, whatever going on season.
Yeah, it's always tough this time of year. It feels like it always goes around, especially in the United States, particularly. It's summer over here, so I feel like, it's not quite as bad here, but yeah, I'm really, really excited. Just kind of hopefully avoid that up until I come to the United States and then probably get drilled with it like I always do, either on the way back or while I'm there, sometimes even. If anybody remembers the great COVID disaster of 2021, I guess I had to deal with. That was not very good. Shout out to the people. You look better, Bryce. The people are noticing. The people are seeing it.
I don't know if that's a compliment or not. I don't know how much better I can look, but yeah, I appreciate I energy level is definitely better. So I'm excited for this to talk some post deadline stuff now, where things are at, what we think about the moves in terms of where they land teams, and I guess a move that was for naught.
Let's talk about that move that happened for naught. So the Lakers tried to trade for Mark Williams before the NBA trade deadline on the Wednesday night beforehand. That deal did not actually go through the league office, from what I understand, until Thursday. And all of it was contingent upon physicals. And Mark Williams, a player that Bryce and I extensively discussed as a player who has had many injuries throughout the course of his career, did not pass the Lakers physical. And I'm of a couple of minds on this. So this deal's been rescinded. Let's just note that from the jump here. This deal has been rescinded. It's not going to happen. Mark Williams is not going to play for the Lakers. My two minds are, long-term, yes. I think this is probably better for the Lakers than what the other option was here, which is that they lose all of their flexibility and optionality, having moved Dalton Connect, having moved the 2031 first, having then brought in Mark Williams, a player with a number of injury question marks that people around the league continued to have even while this whole thing was happening. Also, though, the Lakers aren't in a good spot now at the center position. They're going to have to sign a buyout guy. We'll see who that ends up being. Jackson Hayes is their current starting center. He's played okay. Here's the thing. The Lakers, throughout all of this craziness, they have really figured some things out on defense with the smaller lineup. They have really been able to be a lot more aggressive and forthright on the defensive end. LeBron, it feels like, has taken a bit of a lift on that end recently as well. Bringing Jared Vanderbilt back into the lineup, I think, has given them a ton of energy and aggression. So, yes, the smaller lineup is working, but it's hard to do that for 48 minutes in the playoffs. This isn't like baseball where you can just run out a bullpen game the entire game, right? And just make that work. You do, especially when you run into the Nuggets, when you run into certain teams, you're going to need an option at the center position to be able to deal with things. they'll be able to find options. So because they are over the first apron, they are not eligible to sign anybody who gets bought out, making more than the mid-level exception. So for instance, someone brings up Clint Capella in the YouTube comments. Clint Capella is not an option for them. They are not able to sign him. Somebody like Alex Len, or somebody like a Chris Boucher, a Larry Nance, if those guys were to get bought out, maybe it would be an option. But those guys aren't, Larry Nance is a difference maker, but he's not like a big. He's more of just like a, hybrid 4-5 kind of. Chris Boucher, really skinny, not necessarily like a true big in the, traditional sense of the word. So their options are going to be somewhat limited here. Honestly, their best option might end up being Jackson Hayes at the end of the day, because he's been in the scheme. He's been around the system at this point. He knows what it is under JJ Redick. But where does all of this leave you? Like, the good news that you and I didn't really love this deal because we have questions about Mark Williams, probably better for the long term, but for the short term, it feels like they really made an error here, especially knowing that Mark Williams has these injury concerns going into this deal, and not doing like a backup deal of some sort as well, because they could have used another backup center at the end of the day. They could have gone out and gotten 2 centers and it probably would have been fine.
Yeah. So when the Luka trade happened, what night was that?
Saturday or Sunday.
Yeah. So yeah, because they had time, essentially, is my point, to go out and make another move to find the big, which they did. And to your point, if it's like Mark Williams, you wonder if, like, hey, we know there's injury stuff here. We know that we may not like the medicals once we get our hands on it. Maybe we should move quickly on this just in case we don't like that, because then once you're past the deadline, you're past the deadline. So I think in the short term, it is concerning. It was the first thing I said whenever the trade happened, when I talked to people about, like, okay, where are the Lakers at? Like, we're going to talk about it here in a little bit in terms of where do we think this leaves them on the contender ranking. And when we talk about where they're at, I'm sure not having a big is going to come up over and over, especially when you consider OKC now has bigs. Denver has the best big in the entire NBA. The Grizzlies can play big. The Wolves, who have been playing better, have a big. Now, I realize it's not that kind of big, but all of those teams can not only have bigs, but play like 2 bigs, right? The Wolves are finding success right now playing Gobert and Naz Reid together. So, and obviously the Thunder potentially with Chet and Hartenstein. So I think it really puts them in a situation in the short term for the rest of this year. Long term, I do think it opens up that optionality, that versatility, that potential to go out and maybe make a better move that is more suited to, okay, long term, what is this going to look like with Luka, with Austin Reeves, how much ever longer LeBron has. So it's a weird dynamic in that way, where I'm like, okay, didn't like the trade. Now they get out of it, but also like where are they at for the rest of this season is a little bit worrisome.
Totally agree. Just to rehash like a couple of reasons why we didn't love this deal at the time for the Lakers. The injury history is just very real. Mark Williams has suffered ankle injuries in his rookie year, back injury his sophomore year, and then this year in his 3rd season, came into the year with a foot injury that ended up requiring him to have some time on the sidelines to recover. He's played 85 games out of a potential, I believe it's like 219 or so that he could have played for the Charlotte Hornets in his 2.5 years in the league. And on top of that, like, he is a very bad defender right now. People can talk about like the Hornets perimeter defenders hanging him out to dry as much as they want to. That's not inaccurate, but the other issue with Mark is that his overall rim protection is just not very good. He doesn't use his chest super well. He retreats far too much backward when contesting, and it results in guys just having an angle to finish and having sight lines, even though he has that 9'9" standing reach. These are improvable things. Like, he is going to be able to hopefully get better at some point. But like right now, if we're talking for this season in the playoffs, like, I'm not 100% convinced that Jackson Hayes like would have been that much worse than Mark Williams right now. Mark Williams would have been a better offensive player because Mark is a really capable finisher around the basket, has really good hands, extremely long, very high standing reach, very high max vertical, if you want to put it that way, for Luka to be able to find on lobs. But like, Jackson Hayes can also roll to the rim at a super, super high level. He's a super athlete. There are real concerns. Like, someone asked in the comments, is Mark Williams or Jalen Duren a better defender? They're pretty close. And like, Bryce and I talk a lot about how substandard we think Jalen Duren is. Honestly, like, I think Jalen Duren does a better job out on the perimeter than what Mark Williams does, which is
Mark
concerning.
Just has physical tools that Jalen Duren doesn't. Jalen Duren doesn't have a 9'9" standing reach where you're going to fill him even if he's not in the correct position. As I've watched Jalen Duren more this season, I would venture to say Jalen Duren just like putting his hand in the pocket passing window and being in positions and stuff is probably, even though it's a weakness for him, is probably better than Mark Williams. He just doesn't have the straight length. The other thing with the Jackson Hayes point, the difference now though is you went from having Mark Williams as your starter and Jackson Hayes as your backup in 48 minutes of those, or 40 minutes and then 8 minutes of small ball, to now you only have Jackson Hayes as your option. And that's why this is concerning for the now, even though big picture, we did have concerns about what Mark Williams was going to be, even for this season, especially defensively. I think we both thought offensively, this is exactly what Luka needs. How do the Lakers put a lob threat on the floor with Luka for all of his minutes, unless Jackson Hayes is able to go 36 or whatever Luka's going to play in the playoffs?
Yeah. I mean, that can't happen. Like, it absolutely won't be a circumstance where Jackson goes 36 minutes. They'll go small through stretches, or they'll sign somebody, right? Like, there are options, potentially over in Europe, depending on, like, I don't really want to dive into the European outs because like those guys' season like is still going right now. And I'm sure there are players that would love to come play for the Lakers, but like, I don't have intimate detail on like the NBA outs that guys have like in season and things like that. So I don't want to, like dig into that and talk about those guys. Like, I can talk about the Australian guys though. That season just ended this weekend, the regular season. Tasmania did not make the playoffs, in part because Will Magnay got hurt this season, and he is still recovering from his injury. It looks like, he's getting going on the court again now. So, he couldn't come in and play immediately for the Lakers, but he is somebody where if I was the Lakers, like, and I would probably try to cut Markieff and Christian Wood and, maybe bring in Magnay on a two-way, elevate Christian Coloco and then sign a buyout center that comes available, whoever it is. Right.
Yeah, no, I mean, they're going to have to find a way to win on the margins there and see if they can, you might as well throw a few things at it and try to figure it out, because the one name we haven't mentioned as we brought up is now they do still have Dalton Connect. And so now the wing room has a little bit more depth than what it looked like whenever the trade was going through. And we've outlined some of Dalton Connect's concerns, especially on the defensive end. But one thing we know about Luka is he creates wide open, weak side corner threes. Dalton Connect is a guy that can really score the basketball, really shoot the basketball, at least in theory. We'll see how he looks, in a playoff series and stuff like that. But now you still do have that wing in depth in terms of what he brings offensively at the very least. So now this center position is definitely where you want to throw any potential resources, avenues, attention, whatever, and throw as much at it as you can to try to piece together 48 minutes of as close to quality center play as you can get.
Yeah, totally. So look, it's going to be a lot of small ball. They're going to have to figure out some answers here. Look, throughout this whole thing, like, I do feel quite bad for Mark Williams as well. I will just note here, because look, like, I can tell you, This is out there publicly, but like, it wasn't like things that Mark Williams has had pop up before in terms of like his physical with the Lakers, right? That's been, I think Shams reported that, and like that's the impression I've gotten as well. So this isn't to say that like Charlotte, I want to be clear about this too, you know, with these physicals, like teams do imaging on like the body, right? For different players, and they make sure that like everything is clear. Charlotte assuredly like handed over all of the information that they had on Mark. I would guess like that they did imaging like at the start of the season or whatever, and was happy to hand that over. And it's very possible that playing 25 games and practicing and everything, that maybe something has gotten a little bit worse with Mark Williams. Like, I'm not saying that this is what happened. I'm just saying that like, don't be so quick to be like, oh, Charlotte like withheld information or whatever. Cause I've seen that, you know, conspiracy happening. That's just not the reality. Like these things, you know, continue to build over time, right? That's the reality. So yeah, just as I look through all of this right now and look through it all, the person I feel the worst for is Mark Williams, because he's entering an extension window this summer. He's lost a lot of leverage here, even with how he's played, because of all of this injury stuff just being in the open space now. And I feel bad. Like I don't think that is a good thing for Mark Williams, that now, you know, he's in this really difficult position to try and get paid. Like if I'm Charlotte, like I'm lowballing the hell out of him, saying like, you're not gonna have a market next year.
Yeah, it's hard. And think about Mark Williams as well. Think about the emotions. And I guess Dalton Connect went through this to an extent as well of, okay, it's one thing whenever a team decides to trade you. Now you have to walk back into that building. So if you're Mark Williams, over a span of a week, you went from, okay, feeling like you're kind of balling out for the Charlotte Hornets, right? Like establishing yourself. You get traded to the Lakers, who are the hottest name in the league because they're the Lakers, but also just made this trade for Luka Doncic. You think you're going to get to go play with LeBron James and Luka Doncic, and you're like going to be the new Derek Lively, Daniel Gafford for Luka Doncic. And then all of a sudden you find out you don't get to. And as you highlighted, you may not even know why. Like like whatever was found, maybe something you weren't aware of, or like who knows what that means for him. And then now you have to walk back into Charlotte, where you feel like they didn't want you. Like, I know they put out the press release where I also thought it was funny. They refused to call them the Lakers. They called them the other team in the press release, which was hilarious. But like, you have to walk back in to that. And I know they said like, hey, the Lakers threw their best offer at us, you know, whatever, but you got to feel like you're going to somewhere where you weren't really wanted anymore or valued or whatever. Can't be easy. So I don't know. It's just, it's got to be a tough situation for him. And I'm sure he'll handle it like a professional and go out and do his thing. But that's also a team that's just not very good, Sam. You know, like, so now you're going to have to go back and play in that environment where the talent level is just not great and they're not winning. And so it's tough. And same thing with Connect. I think it's probably easier for Connect to understand, I would think.
Yeah.
I don't know. Maybe like just the understanding of like, hey, we needed a big, you know, whatever, but still they drafted you. And then 6 months later, they tried to trade you. And now you're walking back into that building. Just tough situations to be in for those guys.
Yeah. So it's just really, really hard. I mean, it's, you know, it's a situation where I'm sure nobody was expecting or hoping this would happen. And, you know, here we are. And, you know, the Lakers should have, like, this is what it comes down to for me. Like, yes, the end result is probably good for the Lakers at the end of the day. The process here was not great. Like we can just say that, right? Like you and I talked throughout the, you know, deadline process that we thought that like somebody like Day'Ron Sharpe, somebody like a Jericho Sims, they could have gotten for, you know, a second round pick probably very easily, and could have been their backup option if they wanted a body, right? And that would, like Jericho Sims is better than anybody else in the buyout market outside of the Nance Boucher class that like it seems like is not going to come available. Boucher, Bobby Webster was asked about him at their post deadline press conference. And he said, like, we're really happy to have Chris. Chris is really happy to be here. So we don't foresee a buyout. I mean, Larry Nance, like Quinn Snyder loves Larry Nance and like wants him on the team. So maybe like I'd be surprised if Larry Nance came available. Like, I'm not saying it's impossible. I'd just be surprised if that was to happen at this point. And now, if you're the Lakers, you just got to kind of make do with what's best. But in the long run, I do think that this is probably what is for the best. I'm sure Charlotte is very frustrated with this. Like I've, kind of gotten indications that Charlotte is like not happy with this process. Even their public press release makes it like clear that they are passive aggressively frustrated with this entire thing. Yeah. But look, like it's hard for them too, because I don't know how they feel about Mark Williams, but I know that like I was frustrated watching Mark Williams. I'm sure they were probably a little bit frustrated watching Mark on defense. They probably thought, oh my God, we just like cashed in.
Yeah,
like,
that's true.
Handle this. And now he has to go back there with his value tanked in some way. Like that just feels really complicated to me too.
Well, and every other team in the league got to see the response to, wow, the Lakers gave up way too much for Mark Williams. So, nobody's going to be coming in with the offer of a young player and an unprotected first round pick, because they're going to get kind of cooked for it the way the Lakers did when the Lakers made the deal. So, yeah, I mean, I didn't think about it from the Hornets front office perspective of, man, we feel like we just made a really good deal. Like this player who's been, had some injury history. Maybe we've been a little unhappy with some of the progression, defensive, whatever, however they feel about him.
Yeah.
And we turned him into, a guy that was just selected in the first round this last draft and a 2031 unprotected. Feel pretty good about that. And then now you have to bring him back in and figure out how you move forward with him. Or as you've mentioned, recoup the trade value in some way and get rid of this medical history stigma that's going to stay with him moving forward. So yeah, it's a tough situation all around.
It's a really tough situation. Okay. The next thing I do want to talk about here is just like the continued fallout of the Luka Doncic stuff. So Anthony Davis gets hurt in his first game with the Dallas Mavericks and is seemingly going to miss like fairly real time here.
After hooping, like he was playing extremely well. Like he was sending a message, obviously, about, in his first, how many ever minutes he got, was playing very well.
100% was playing great. But this is the risk you run with Anthony Davis. And this is why this deal was always batshit fucking crazy. Like, Anthony Davis is a guy that has played more than, I think it's like 65 games just once in the last 6 years. And you're trading Luka Doncic for him. Like, I don't get it. So in the last 6 years, including this year now, because he's not going to get there this season, seemingly, he has played more than 63 games. Let's see, just once. It was last season when he played 76. Yeah. But 2019, he played 56 games. 2020, he played 62 games. 2021, he played 36. 2022, he played 40. 2023, he played 56. Last year, he played 76. This year, he is up to 43 of, let's call it 50, and he's going to miss a bunch more time this year. But like, at least he's not like out of shape? Question mark. Like, what are we doing?
Yeah,
this is the exact reason this never made sense. Anthony Davis is not your, like, all due respect to Anthony Davis, who's a great basketball player and is one of the 10 best players in the league, and Max Christie's balling out and sure, whatever. Anthony Davis himself has not been the pinnacle of peak health in his NBA career.
Yeah, and ultimately, I think some point people would point to, well, like maybe Anthony Davis is his bad luck and they think Luka's is going to be because he doesn't take care of his body. Availability is availability at the end of the day, right? Like some people have bad luck. Like I don't like injury prone is not a word I like, but truly some people just can't stay healthy for whatever reason. And I'm not smart enough to tell you why, but there is something weird about trading a guy because you shorted his health when he's 25 for a guy who is 31 and has had availability. I should say you shorted his availability. That's what the Mavericks said, right? For whatever reason, they shorted Luka Doncic's availability throughout the rest of his career because they didn't think he was going to be available to play. They traded him for a 31-year-old who has had the exact same concerns. Again, doesn't matter why, has had availability concerns and issues throughout his entire career. You can't be surprised when this happens. I mean, he wasn't healthy when you traded for him. So it's I feel like we're beating a dead horse with it, but it's not surprising that it happened, I guess. It is Anthony Davis, as talented as he is, he's had availability concerns.
Yeah, so this is where we get into what the Dallas Mavericks' new governor, Patrick Dumont, had to say about this to the, I believe it was Dallas Morning News. Dumont made it clear to the news that he too is a big believer in culture and in specific traits the Mavericks want in players. In my mind, the way teams win is by focus, by having the right character, by having the right culture, having the right dedication to work as hard as possible to create a championship winning outcome. And if you're not doing that, you're going to lose. Dumont's tone then turned forceful. If you look at the greats in the league, the people you and I grew up with, Michael Jordan, Larry Bird, Kobe Bryant, Shaquille O'Neal, they worked really hard every day with a singular focus to win. And if you don't have that, it doesn't work. And if you don't have that, you shouldn't be a part of the Dallas Mavericks. What the fuck, dude? Like, genuinely, truly, and I believe this is Brad Townsend who got him like on the record. How, first and foremost, how dare you? Kind of like Luka Doncic is like a dude from Slovenia who's worked his balls off every day to get to the NBA and to become what he is capable of. Second, the guys that you and I grew up with, Larry Bird, Kobe Bryant, Shaq, you can like hit Google and look at the stories about Shaquille O'Neal. Like, what Shaquille O'Neal first and foremost got traded out of Orlando, like, and then signed with the Lakers, and then got traded out of the Lakers because like people thought this was going to break down. And oh, by the way, then he went and won a fucking title in Miami. This is honestly, I have not been more angry about like an owner statement than this one in a while. This represents such like a lack of understanding of A, what the fan base is going through, but B, like what it takes to be a super high level athlete. Like, how fucking dare this dude come in here and like be the governor of this team for as short of a time as he's been involved and be like, oh, they worked really, really hard every day with a singular focus to win. You think Luka Doncic doesn't give a shit about winning? You think he's not competitive? Like, watch this dude play.
So I have two thoughts when I read this. One, Luka better be an absolute disaster off the court for them to put this stuff out this strongly. And I usually don't care to know the ins and outs of things. Like, I don't think it's any of my business. But this is one, like, I want the stories to come out. I want the book to come out about how he never works on his game, how he eats like crap, how he doesn't care, how he's a bad teammate. Because to me, if I read between the lines, that's what they're saying. The continued message is not a winner, not a hard worker, not a culture guy. I would like to know the examples of how that's entirely true. The second thing is, and I'm cool, like if that's what you want to build the foundation of your organization on those type of guys, then you better stick to it through and through, from top to the bottom. Kyrie better be grinding every single day. Derek Lively better be that guy every day. Like, I hope you're holding everybody as accountable as Luka Doncic whenever it comes to that. or you just trade them if they're not that person. I just, maybe I'm naive here, Sam. I just find it hard to believe that Luka Doncic is a lazy ass that doesn't care and doesn't work hard and is an awful teammate. And if he is, how the hell did he get that team to the finals last year? Like, I don't understand how that worked. So, excuse me, I'm struggling to understand. They like double and triple down on it and are being very aggressive and adamant with it to the point I'm kind of like you, where I'm like, wow, this is aggressive. This is a lot.
It's a wild choice. It's a completely wild choice to like come out and say these things publicly. And like, oh, by the way, again, like your fan base is like in the middle, not of like a revolt, but they are so angry right now. And rightfully so. Like the Dallas Mavericks fans like deserve to be frustrated with this, but they especially deserve to be frustrated with this after this. Like, you know what? Like sometimes like owners make, sometimes GMs make decisions that you disagree with, whatever, right? But like this is kind of like laughing in the face of fans to me. Like this guy just took you to the finals last year. And I get it that like, look, like Windhorst literally had to do a thing like at the finals after game 3 where he was like, that's the winner's, tunnel over there. And, Luka's over here in the loser's tunnel because he complains about the officials and all this stuff. Right. The guy took them to the finals. What, you think he was just fucking around? Like,
I don't know. It's fascinating. Again, this is what I want to know, the stories. I want to know. Like, I usually don't care, Sam. I truly don't. I don't think it's my place to know the ins and outs of some of this stuff. I think it's my job to analyze the basketball we see on the court for the most part, and I'm comfortable with that. This has gotten to the point where I want to know because it almost seems disrespectful or like they're treating us like we're stupid for just. I can't just take it at face value, I guess is my point. I'm struggling to just listen to him say that and go and just fully believe it that Luka Doncic isn't any of those things. And maybe I'm crazy, like maybe I'm so naive and stories will come out of LA and whatever. I don't know. Maybe so. Maybe we're all going to be wrong. But
yeah,
I struggle to take it at face value. I want to know more. I want the examples of him not working on his game, of him being whatever, so poor for the culture. I just feel like you can find 1,000 different and worse examples of being bad for the culture than what Luka Doncic is. And I don't want it to turn into like a Luka is perfect thing, right? I've critiqued his defense as much as anybody and some of those things, but I don't think he's not a winning basketball player.
Then
Sam,
you're going to reference like, and like, I think I'm probably the driver of the Shaquille O'Neal is like underrated long-term historically bandwagon. Like, I think that because he is the way he is on TV and everything, like we undervalue how unbelievably dominant Shaquille O'Neal was and how incredible that dude was on the basketball court. I mean, you go look at a photo of Shaquille O'Neal when he came into the league out of LSU and you look at him in his prime with the Lakers, and then you go look at him in Miami and you look at him those last years in Boston. Didn't stop him from being a top 10 player of all time. Like it's completely and utterly baffling to me. It makes literally no sense whatsoever. And oh, by the way, I keep saying this. And again, this does not come from me having any knowledge of Kyrie. I don't think anybody has any knowledge of Kyrie realistically. Like I'm glad he's finally been named to the All-Star game. He is the replacement for Anthony Davis. It is so well deserved that's going to be what he gets the reward for here. But he has a player option this summer. That point can't be emphasized enough, in my opinion. You've built this entire thing around Anthony Davis, who tends to miss a lot of time, and Kyrie Irving, who is a player that is, again, you and I talk about this all the time, might be the most underrated player in the league, genuinely at this point. He also is mercurial, like a dude who marches to the beat of his own drum, whatever phrase, idiom, statement you want to make about him, he is somebody who makes his own choices for his own reasons. And anybody that thinks like they know what he's going to do
Is
when
wrong.
it comes down to it in June, July, I find it hard to believe that they know for sure.
No, it's a good point, right? Because it's like, okay, you would think that, hey, we're essentially handing you the keys to the car, Kyrie. Maybe Kyrie doesn't want the keys to the car. Like, if there was ever a Kyrie thing to do, it would be, you know what? I kind of liked being the second guy playing off of this star and then being the guy in the second unit. And I really kind of fell into that role. I really enjoy it. You know what? I'll turn down that player option, go find that role somewhere else in the NBA. You know, it's like, would you be shocked if he ended up on the Lakers next year somehow? Like, he's just like, you know what? I really like playing next to Luka. I'm gonna go play for the Lakers. You never know with Kyrie. Like, who knows? Maybe he wants to go play with the Nets and be their guy or something. You know, to your point, he's just one of those guys you cannot predict. Maybe he also uses it as a way to hold them and get as much money as he can, because he has
Totally
plenty of leverage whenever it comes to this offseason and how he wants to handle it.
And this is the other thing now too, right? Like, if I'm Kyrie, I'm going to them and saying, you're giving me 4 full years, 35% max.
You maxing
right
me
now.
out. You have no, yep. And we brought this up. Nico said leverage, you know, he worried about leverage with Luka or whatever. If I don't remember whenever he went through his whole spiel. I'm like, you completely lost it with Kyrie. You talk about leverage. You have none with that dude. He has you whatever he wants.
Totally. Like, I want 4 full years, max number 35%, or I'm out. And he has to, like, the Mavericks have to do that, or else this window that they've talked about with Anthony Davis, them having it, it's over. Like, it's gone at that point if Kyrie just leaves for nothing in the summer. And by the way, like, the reason that I wouldn't be like wildly enthused about giving Kyrie that deal, he turns 33 in March. So you're talking about age 34, 35, 36, 37 playoff years for Kyrie. And like, Kyrie seems like a dude that takes care of himself. We haven't seen a drop off yet, but that feels like a risky deal in and of itself.
Yeah. It's fascinating situation.
It truly is. It really is. Like, Kyrie is now at the point where he has everything over the Mavs, or he gets to just leave and say, I want to go somewhere else and do what I want to do. So yeah. Okay. That's all we got on those two things here, on those two teams that continue to be in the news for reasons that were entirely avoidable from Nico Harrison. But before we move on, we got to talk about PrizePicks. PrizePicks is the best place to get real money sports action. With over 10 million members and billions of dollars in awarded winnings, PrizePicks has made daily fantasy sports accessible to all. We love PrizePicks here at Game Theory because of how easy they make it to get real money sports action. I hope that all of you had all of your picks on anybody on the Eagles yesterday and nobody on the Chiefs, as unfortunately Bryce knows all too well. That was ugly. Unless you had Xavier Worthy or DeAndre Hopkins, that probably came through at the end. But man, you can make your picks in less than 60 seconds. Basketball season's getting rolling now. Football season is obviously over, so PrizePicks is still rolling. You can turn your sports opinions into real money all season long. Download the app today and use the code Game Theory to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Download the app today and use the code Game Theory to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. PrizePicks, run your game. Okay. Bryce, what we wanted to do you want to talk about the Chiefs at all, or are you just good?
No. So I just wanted to address real quick, because I don't want people to be like, oh, Bryce, isn't going to talk about the Chiefs. If they would have won, he'd be all over it. I just want everybody to know. And I have receipts in the text message of the Game Theory podcast. GMAC said, Bryce, are you going to take time if the Chiefs win? And I said, no, I will not. He said, what? You sure? I said, I will not talk about the Super Bowl on the podcast. So I just want people to know this isn't me pouting or what. And I am pouting all day. Like, don't get me wrong. I'm devastated and everything else. But my intent was to never talk about the game, win or lose.
I can confirm that for what it's worth.
Thank
I am a very important reporter who is employed by the New York Times, and I must actually tell the truth on these things. It is fair, and please don't take that seriously. For the love of God, that is not at all who I am. Okay, Bryce. Let's talk about. Do we want to just note here the All-Star replacements here real quick?
Yeah.
So Kyrie for Anthony Davis, and then Trae Young is going to replace Giannis Antetokounmpo. This message in the comments saying Sabonis All NBA last 2 years, now arguably having his best year, can't make the All-Star team. That kind of jogged my memory a little bit. Honestly, I think that those two would have been my picks, Kyrie and Trae, at the end of the day. But I am a known person who is like a little bit lower on Sabonis in general. I thought Sabonis or Kyrie would have either of them were completely reasonable picks.
Yeah, I had Kyrie as a guy that I just feel like he's had an incredible year, and he's, Luka has missed a lot of time in Dallas, and he's had to be that guy for a lot of this season. He's done it very, very well, very efficiently. And then Trae would have been in for me also. So I have no issues. I understand. It seems like Sabonis is yearly the guy that we have this conversation around. He's one of those guys I struggle with in terms of value because of, defensively, rebounding numbers, what do they always mean in that sense? And so I understand people's frustration with it, but this is probably who I would have went with as well.
So real quick as well, Jahlil Okafor has signed a 10-day deal with the Indiana Pacers as well. Honestly, I just wanted to shout out Jahlil Okafor. I think it's amazing that he's made it back to the NBA. He's having a really good year in the G League this year. It's a well-deserved deal. The Pacers were seemingly signing Alex Len a couple days ago. I think that was reported. And where this leaves that, who knows, right? But look, Jahlil Okafor, it's a cool story to me. It's a really, really genuinely cool story that this guy has made it back to the NBA.
Yeah, always. Like, I was thinking about this last night or today sometime. Like, I don't necessarily cheer for guys in the league, it is just, I just watch and evaluate, but there are cool stories, right? Where you see somebody drafted that high, doesn't pan out, bounces around, and just kind of the adversity you go through and the stick-to-itiveness to get back and work through it. And he's not an unskilled player. It's just his game doesn't really fit the modern, the current, I shouldn't say modern, the current NBA the way maybe it could have 15 years ago when he may have been more valued and prioritized. But finding a way to stick around is finding a way to stick around. I mean, I don't think we give these guys enough credit sometimes in terms of just how talented they are and how hard it is to be a 1 of 15, even with 30 teams in the NBA. That's really, really impressive. So shout out to him for going through it, going and playing in these G League games. And, all of those aren't exactly the most crowded environments to play in compared to what he's used to. So love it. Really cool. Hopefully he takes advantage.
100%. Let's talk about contender rankings now.
Let's do it.
So my vision here is to sort of tier this out a little bit.
Okay.
In terms of teams that we think are like real contenders, the way you would rank things, the way that you would place these teams in terms of potential to win a title this year, basically. I think that there is a top tier, right?
Yes.
And I think we agree that there are 3 teams in that top tier.
Ooh,
right.
We're gonna have fun.
Okay. Now I'm fascinated.
I think we will have this. Here's what I think we'll agree on. I think we'll have the same top 3 teams. No, we may not. Let's go ahead. I don't want to ruin it because I don't know.
Okay. So
we'll have the same top 2.
For me right now, if I had to pick one team, I would pick Oklahoma City.
Sure.
I trust their defense an incredible amount. I love the way that they're able to play offensively. I think that Chet is going to be an incredibly impactful addition. Now, this is, they didn't make any moves at the deadline because their deadline move is Chet Holmgren, right? Which is the second best player that anybody was going to get at the deadline behind Luka, apparently, right? And I guess AD, but you're downgrading from Luka to AD. So to me, Chet is such a big addition to them. He allows them to go big. He allows them to go small. He allows them to play different defensive coverages. He allows them to play big with him and Hartenstein if they have to against certain lineups, like against Minnesota that you mentioned, or allows them to go small like they can potentially with him at the 5, and then you put 4 perimeter players around it and you still have the requisite size to be able to be effective there. It's just such an enormous addition to everything that they do. They've been freaking fantastic without him this season. I mean, you look at their record. I mean, it's just completely obscene. They're sitting here at 42-9 right now. Best defense in the league, top 6 offense in the league. They're going to get Chet back here like full time. I mean, right now, if you made me pick one team, I would pick them.
So I want to reiterate something for everybody. We are talking contenders, like who we think will win the title, not who the best team in the league is. Like, because sometimes we do rankings of who are what's the power rankings of the teams right now, right?
Yep.
And so I want to be clear that we're not having that conversation. I actually went back and forth a little bit in my mind. If I had to, how I try to think of this is if I had to put a substantial amount of money to me in a bet, who would I put the money on, right? And that I don't bet and I hate it. So the idea of actually having to put money that matters to me on somebody is significant. And I'll be honest, I went back and forth between them and I assume the second team we talk about. I did end up with them number 1. And it's because of a lot of the things you just talked about and what I believe helped you win in the playoffs. Could they have the best player in every series they play? Yes, right? SGA could be the best player in every series throughout a playoffs. I'm not saying he automatically will be, but they have a legit MVP, top 4, top 5, top 3, whatever player in the league. They have they have the best defense in the league that they just added to with Chet Holmgren. They have all of these answers in the way they play defense. I think that is what is exciting to me, Sam, is you have the 2 big, you have the 1 big, you have different versions of bigs within that. And then you have all of these perimeter defenders okay, you want to go guard Boston? We would, if you're thinking of Oklahoma City, they would have to feel like they have the matchups for Tatum, for Brown, for Derek White, for Peyton Pritchard off the bench, and being able to match all of that. The one question, right? The one question is, what happens if a team is able to slow down SGA and you need some secondary creation? Is J-Dub ready for that? And who else on the team can do that if he's not, or they need a little extra? If they don't win the finals, I think ultimately that's probably the conversation we're having is, man, J-Dub wasn't quite able to drive offense in the non-SGA minutes, in the in the games where SGA maybe had an off night or whatever. He wasn't able to be that number 2. I'm not saying he can't be. I'm not here to doubt J-Dub.
We're saying how it would go wrong if it goes wrong.
If it goes wrong, barring health and everything else, that seems to be the most glaring potential weakness is that.
Yeah. So I would agree with that. I agree with everything you just said on Oklahoma City. To me, it's just all about the fact that they have the versatile defenders. This is why Oklahoma City ahead of Cleveland for me, right? Cleveland just is going to have inherent issues in terms of lineup constructions that they're going to present, right? Because you're going to play the 2 small guards all the time. And Oklahoma City just has a number of different bodies that they can throw at those 2 small guards and make their lives really, really, really hard. And on the opposite side, okay, who is going to slow down Shea from Cleveland, right? I would venture it's now going to be an attempt at DeAndre Hunter, probably, right? That or maybe Isaac Okoro. Well, if you do that, then if it's Okoro, you're taking offense off the court. If it's Hunter's okay against shifty guards like that. I would say he's better against bigger wings, personally. I would trust him honestly on Jalen Williams a lot more than I would trust him on Shea.
I agree
And
with
I
that.
think he could actually cause some issues on Jalen Williams. The thing with Hunter is that, saying Hunter is meh on defense, Hunter is a really good on ball defender. Like if he is asked to guard somebody just one-on-one, he is good at that. His stuff is when he has to make like rotations and has to make like decisions and process things quickly. He doesn't do it as quickly as you would like to see it all the time. But like one-on-one defense, he's pretty good at that. Like I'm not saying he's like an all defense guy, but like he's pretty good on that end. And like an upgrade on what Cleveland has, in my opinion. So given the offense, like Okoro is probably a better on-ball defender in a vacuum than what Hunter is, but the difference in offense between those two is pretty drastic. Okay. We'll talk about Cleveland in a second here.
Yep.
But I have Boston at number 2.
I do as well.
Okay. So we've just seen a Boston-Cleveland game, right? I thought the process that Boston utilized in that game was really, really awesome in terms of for the first 3 quarters and really in the fourth quarter too. They just missed a lot of shots early in the fourth quarter, but like it was just relentless. We are attacking Darius Garland. We are attacking like whatever advantage we can get all the time, every single time. And what was fun about this matchup was even though it was at the deadline, basically everyone played. Like for both of those teams, like you had all 4 of the guys for Cleveland, you had all 6 of the guys for the Celtics. They get to play all the time. Got to see different cross matches. We got to see different situations occur. It was in Cleveland, so we got to see what that looks like. It was an amazing basketball game, and Cleveland like scratched and fought and clawed their way back into this thing, which was really, really good. But man, I just think that the advantage is that Boston's playmakers are a little bit bigger and are really effective defensively. Darius Garland is an incredible basketball player, having an amazing season, who is well deserving of his All-Star berth. But the defense does leave something questionable against that specific matchup with Boston. Against other matchups, not really. But against Boston, it can be an issue with their big playmakers.
Yeah, listen, Boston is the team, right, where whatever you want to call, if they're coasting a little bit here and there, if there's a lack of focus at times or whatever. But as you mentioned there, we've seen them in certain matchups where they've really come to play. For whatever reason, they really want to send a message whenever they play GMAC's New York Knicks, right? Like they show up and they really send a message there. Tatum is still having a really solid season, averaging 27. Jaylen Brown hasn't been great from the 3-point line, but a good year. Porzingis, 27 games. We've seen him back earlier than what we thought. Like all of the normal cast is still there. I do have one question for the Celtics. And it's really like Drew Holiday's offensive season has been weird. 44% from the field, 34% from 3. There's games where it's just not great. I know they ask him to do a lot of things, right? Like all of a sudden you'll look up and like Drew Holiday's down in the dunker and, because of the versatility he does offer. Are you worried at all? Like, is there a little bit of a concern that a team is all of a sudden like you're playing the Thunder in the finals and they're able to take Chet and put Chet on Drew and not really guard him. And he becomes, do you think Drew becomes that sort of a liability in I don't either, but I find myself, what is it? Intrusive thoughts. An intrusive thought I have is this the year where Drew's offense falls off enough where he becomes that sort of liability?
So like, here's the only thing that I will say. Like, yes, Drew is shooting 34% from 3 this year. It's down. Drew in general, up until last season, if you look at his last 3 playoff runs before that, had been in like the 30% from 3 range, right?
Yep.
He was really good when he was young with Philly. Like he knocked down threes at a high level then. Was obviously fantastic last year with Boston, and I thought had like a case as being the finals MVP, honestly, with the way that he took on those tough defensive matchups against Luka and Kyrie. But I think where I'm at is I would say I trust Drew. I think Drew will be fine on offense because he can shoot. But if he goes through like a cold stretch as a shooter, that's when things will get iffy because he does go through some cold stretches here and there.
And okay, so let's say he does. You still have Derek White. You still have Jaylen Brown, Jason Tatum. Peyton Pritchard has been awesome. Like, do you even have an answer for that situation, right? Like Boston may have an answer or you go big and put Horford on the floor or whatever. Like, I think they may have an answer anyway. And again, this was like, an intrusive thought where I find myself wondering. And when you do this and you're talking about the top teams, I find myself looking more towards what could go wrong. And with them, obviously, like if Porzingis isn't healthy, that's a huge part of this. But beyond that, it was, okay, where can this come around? And I don't think it's Tatum. I don't think it's Brown. I don't think it's Derek White. I love Drew Holiday. I love the way they use him, versatility, defensively, all of that. I think they're going to lock in more come playoffs. That was the thing I found or wondered was, what if the offense has regressed a little bit because he is 34, like he is older, and these things can happen.
And here's the case. I don't even know that it's like regressed, right? It's that he's had a long season. Like he just played a long NBA season last year, directly into the Olympics, directly into this season. Like, is it possible he breaks down like in the Western or in the Eastern Conference Finals, in the finals? I hope not, but I don't know the answer to that for sure. Right? Like that would be what I would say. I don't know the answer for sure on that. And oh, by the way, Al Horford is 38 now.
So I was gonna say that too. Like I was just looking at his numbers and 40% from the field, 35% from three at 41. That's another rotation player.
And Kristaps Porzingis has played 27 games this year and, got hurt in the playoffs last year. So now the good thing is that like Peyton Pritchard and, has stepped up in a big way. And Sam Hauser has been, his normal knockdown shooter self, who is at least solid on defense. Right. So there's room for them to like have some down moments in the playoffs. Right. But man, I think the margin for error is a little bit lower on this team just because of the depth. Now, their ceiling is probably higher than anybody's when they're rolling. I just don't think they're quite as consistent as Oklahoma City, which is why I have them at number 2.
Yeah. No, I thought about it because it was like they are the defending champs. It's the same team. We've seen them be very good this year. I wanted to reward OKC with how good they've been throughout the season. And because I do believe OKC has the makings, and because OKC was there last year, didn't push through, and now is going back, like it's not like their first year getting there. So it was a little bit closer than like when you consider the records between these two teams. Right. But I still ended up with OKC, and then I was pretty confident having Boston here number 2.
I was too. I have Cleveland number 3. Do you have Cleveland number 3?
Yes, but the conversation will come after this. Then if we break tiers.
Okay. So I did not break a tier here. I have Cleveland in this.
No. I mean, if we break a tier before the next team that I would bring up.
Interesting. Okay. So let's talk about Cleveland next. Cleveland has been amazing this year. They're sitting here at 42-10. Like they're right in line with Oklahoma City so far. It does really just come down to like playoff matchup issues for me with them. Now, I want to give their front office credit. They went out and got DeAndre Hunter and got under the tax in the way that like we said they kind of had to. Shout out to ownership there, being willing to take on a significant amount of money in the future with DeAndre Hunter's deal. It will lead to them having to make moves in the summer for sure. Like they're absolutely going to have to, but they still have Donovan Mitchell. They still have Darius Garland. Evan Mobley has been a significantly improved player this season, averaging 19, 9, 3 assists, shooting 39% from three on 3-point attempts per game. He's still super efficient on the interior. Jarrett Allen is shooting 70% at the basket, right? Or 70% overall right now, averaging 14 points, 10 rebounds, has been a tremendous defensive player this season. They have a ton of depth. They have a ton of depth between Max Strus, between DeAndre Hunter. Their 11th man is Craig Porter, right? And Craig Porter, you and I think could probably sneak in a playoff series and be fine. Isaac Okoro and DeAndre Hunter should be a great defensive duo. Dean Wade has been really solid throughout the course of the season. And then you have Ty Jerome and Sam Merrill as well, both of whom are really effective offensive players too. I think that their depth does get them through, if only because, again, now that they do have the Hunter signing, I think that they also have the ability to go big and small. They can go supersized with Hunter, Mobley, Allen, or they could go Mobley off the court if he's in foul trouble or whatever, and go Hunter at the 4 and still have 6'8" with a 7'2" wingspan there and maintain the rebounding because Allen's a really high level rebounder. Or you could go Mobley at the 5, Hunter at the 4, and just switch everything and try and play that way. So it's a really, really interesting team. And I think that the Hunter move does actually upgrade them in a real way.
Yeah, we talked about this, just what he offers and his ability to knock down shots, his size. We've already talked about his defense, so we don't need to go back into that a lot. I think the most impressive thing, and we've talked about it throughout the year, giving the Cavaliers their flowers, is just how they figured out how to make this thing work on the offensive end. I give Darius Garland and Donovan Mitchell a lot of credit. And I probably didn't take into account Darius's injuries enough last season in terms of how that allowed him to be comfortable and coming back from those injuries, fighting through them, all of that. The way those two guys play off the ball is so impressive, because I mentioned last episode how hard it is to take a guy or girl who's played on the ball or off the ball and then try to flip that, right? Like, hey, go play on the ball your whole life. Now go play off the ball and relocate and cut. And it's not easy. And it's not always easy to make those shots. Both of those guys have jumpers that allows them to do so. They get on balance, they move. And then Mobley and Allen's passing, I think, is going to be vital come the playoffs. Those guys have to be able to pass the ball because they don't space it. Allen doesn't space the floor. Mobley's floor spacing will be fascinating in the playoffs, Sam, to see if teams guard him as a floor spacer. My guess is teams initially won't, and he'll have to prove it, and he very well may do so. Or they may close out late because it does take him a little while to get it off. But he can attack closeouts. He can pass. I love his aggressiveness offensively, but I think those two guys and their combination offensively in some ways sets the ceiling for them, because if you can continuously play those guys together offensively and it not be a concern, that makes them so good defensively and makes up for some of the things you have issues wise with Darius and to a much lesser extent, Donovan, who I think is probably neutral defender. Yeah. He's just a little bit bigger than Darius, but Darius being able to hold up on the defensive end may be the biggest thing, right? Because teams are absolutely going to hunt him, right or wrong. That's what teams are going to do. And he's going to have to be able to stay out of foul trouble, hold up, or if they have to start bringing doubles and doing other things, then everybody else has to be able to rotate, switch, scramble, that stuff.
Well, and really what he has to do is he has to be able to outperform his defensive issues on the offensive end, right? And what my concern is in that specific instance is Boston has Derek White and Drew Holiday that they can just throw at him and say, hey, we don't need you on offense. We just need you to knock down shots if you're open. Use all of your energy to go and attack those dudes on defense. Oklahoma City has 7 dudes they can throw at those guys. You've got Caruso, you've got Dort, you've got Kaysen, you've got Jalen Williams. God, not Jalen Wilson. Jalen Williams. You have so many different players that you would feel comfortable guarding Darius Garland in a playoff series. I just think that marginally, right? Because that's what this is. You're talking on the margins. The margin that those guys will be able to decrease Garland on offense is probably a little bit greater than what Garland will be able to do to them on offense.
Yeah.
So I love Darius Garland. He's been, I think you and I have talked about him throughout the entire season as being like this incredible player. But that is the question that the Cavs have to answer is what do they do? Which I'm glad that you brought that up.
Yeah.
Okay. Who is your fourth team?
So here's where I struggle. The team, my fourth team is the Nuggets. But where I struggle with the tier is I don't think they belong in the same tier as the Celtics and the Thunder. So then it's like, but I don't think I love the idea of them being a tier below the Cavs, even though I think the Cavs I'm fine with. So like I struggle. Like it's almost like I need a half tier because it's Nikola freaking Jokic and he's awesome. And this team has snuck themselves into third in the West, game and a half behind the Grizzlies. Over the last 15 games, they're fourth in the NBA in nets behind the Thunder, is stupid. The Timberwolves, the Clippers, and then the Nuggets are right there. Jamal Murray has had a few good months in a row. Porter Jr. is playing well. Christian Brown has absolutely figured it out, whether starting, coming off the bench, whatever. Aaron Gordon's back. Strother, I think, has figured out his role. The issue is, what's it going to look like in the playoffs? Right? What does Russ look like in the playoffs? What does the depth look like in the playoffs? I get all of that, but there is a championship pedigree. They have the best player in the world. They're playing better right now. And again, well, like they can lead the top of the next tier for me. Like that's fine. I just struggled. I don't think they're in Boston and OKC's area group. I struggled completely putting them in a different tier than Cleveland, I guess. Like, does my
your explanation make sense?
Does my dilemma make sense with that?
Yeah. So I do have Cleveland in a slightly. Yeah, it's hard. Like I'd almost wish that like we could have like a half tier and then we get into like Seth Greenberg tiers. And like, I don't really want to do that. Like tier 1, tier 1A, tier 1A2. Like I remember when Greenberg used to do that on ESPN and I'd just like fucking lose my mind. What a moron. Like I think that I would have Denver at 4 right now.
Sure. Yeah.
Denver is a really good basketball team that has the best player in the world. By the way, shout out to Owen Phillips. I love his F5 newsletter.
Yeah, I saw
so
you
funny.
comment on this, so it showed up on my feed. This was interesting.
Yeah, shout out to him. So file this under cool but useless. Nikola Jokic this season is currently in the middle of having the season where his 3-point attempts are longer than anybody else's 3-point attempts in NBA history. His 3-point attempt distance is 29 feet on average. He's taken 204 of them. And oh, by the way, Nikola Jokic shooting 46% from 3 this season. It's ridiculous. He is taking the longest threes in NBA history and is shooting 46%. That's like unfathomable how good he's been as a shooter this season. It makes no sense. He's unbelievable.
He's really, really good. Really good.
It's incredible. So,
I mean, he's averaging a triple-double right now. 29.5, 12-7, 10-3 on 58, 46, 82.
Yeah, like the MVP race is not dead yet. Like he's still very strongly in the MVP mix right now.
Especially now that they're winning. I mean, that was my other thing is I couldn't have made this argument, Sam, I don't think, even a couple weeks ago or whatever. Yeah. And I was just looking through it today and I had recognized that Jamal had been playing better and they had been winning games and like they've jumped Houston at this point. Again, they're a game and a half back of Memphis. I can't say they're OKC. I can't say they're Boston. Cleveland obviously has been a better regular season team. There's no question. But when I factor how good they've been recently, having the best player in the world, and multiple of these guys on this team have won a championship, that brings that distance closer based off what we've seen just regular season win-loss record-wise. And so that's why I struggled having there too much separation between those two teams.
Yeah, totally. I totally get that. Like, honestly, no, I want to see Oklahoma City in Boston more than any other potential finals matchup. But Cleveland Denver would be an amazing finals matchup.
Yeah.
Like, I would, just thinking through that, like, I don't know what I would think would happen there.
That front line of Cleveland would be really interesting, right? Like, you put Jarrett Allen on Jokic, and then you have Mobley roaming off the ball. Who do you put on Jamal Murray in that series, right? Is that another DeAndre Hunter matchup or not? You can't. The Denver's too big outside of that, right? Well, because if you have Hunter on Murray, that's putting Donovan or Darius on Michael Porter Jr. Probably can live that, maybe. So the matchups would be interesting. Maybe Donovan.
You could do it a lot of different ways. Yeah.
Donovan just takes and we don't even know who the Nuggets starting lineup is going to be by that time, right? Because we saw Russ stay in the starting lineup, Christian Brown go to the bench, and then now Russ, I think, has missed some games, and so Christian has been starting.
Yep. So I'm interested to know what they do. I'll say that. I'm very interested to see what they do. Okay. I agree with you that I have Denver at 4.
Okay.
Largely because of Jokic. Like, Jokic is just the best player. If he's not the best player on planet Earth, it's Shea, or it's Giannis. Like, to me, I would take Jokic as being the best player on Earth right now. He's been unbelievable this season. And this is one of the best offensive seasons I've ever seen a player have, probably, at this point. He's shooting 46% on 29 on 3-pointers. They're an average of 29 feet away from the rim. He's shooting 46% from 3, having taken almost 1/10 of his 3-point attempts being like heaves from beyond half court.
Yeah. If
you remove the heaves, he's shooting like 50% from 3. It's bonkers how good Nikola Jokic has been this season. Okay. Number 5, I have the Knicks still.
Yep. I went back and forth with a couple teams.
Yeah. And this is where it gets interesting for me. I do have the Knicks in the same tier, I think, as Denver.
Okay.
And I think that there are a couple other teams you could throw in this mix and we could have a conversation about it. But the Knicks are currently sitting 34-18. They have the second best offense in the league. They average 120 points per 100 possessions. They're just dealing with some minor, OG Anunoby has this weird foot thing that he's dealing with. But they have Jalen Brunson. They have Karl Anthony Towns. Then they have these 3 monster wings in Mikal Bridges, Josh Hart, and OG Anunoby that they have to hope can get them home on defense, right? Maybe they can, maybe they can't. Maybe teams will just attack Jalen Brunson. Teams will attack, Karl Anthony Towns and ball screens. We'll see how it all goes, right? Obviously, you have Deuce McBride as well to be able to throw out there, and he'll be an impact defender who, hopefully at least, and I would think that he will make shots. It's been a little bit more inconsistent there than what I would have hoped this season. But the Knicks, to me, are the team in the Eastern Conference I would take ahead of these other teams right now. And it took me a while to get there. I don't think that they're quite in the same tier as Boston and Cleveland. I think that and obviously I think Knicks fans will look at it and be like, well, why wouldn't we be favored over Cleveland? Right? We've seen how that looks in the playoffs before. I think that the difference with this Cleveland team is that the spacing offensively is just way better under Kenny Atkinson, and the intentionality is way, way better than it was under JB Bickerstaff. I mean, you're dealing with that right now with Pistons, right? I'm so behind the curtain, right? Probably later this week, you guys will have a video on Ausar Thompson. And I broke down the offense and broke down everything with Ausar. I did a Pacers game from, I guess a week and a half ago now. But what I kept coming back to with them was that like the number of times that Jalen Duren was like in the exact spot where Asar Thompson should be cutting backdoor or 45 cutting or whatever it was like really staggering to me.
Yeah.
Honestly, like they just have to get way more intentional about how they space. And that was true of Cleveland back when the Knicks beat them in the playoffs too. So I think the spacing is way better under Kenny. I think that they are just like a little bit ahead of where the Knicks are right now. But I am at the point now where I think I would take the Knicks over the Bucks. Like I think that there are too many attack points on the Bucks defensively at this point, and I think that they should be able to, the Knicks with their offense should be able to pinpoint different issues against Milwaukee. We'll talk about Indiana here eventually. Indiana is a really interesting playoff team that I think is going to be really hard to deal with again for a whole bunch of teams, and they're probably going to rank higher than what people expect on my list. But I still think I'm going with the Knicks because I think that their offense is just a little bit more highly powered than what Indiana can bring.
Yeah, I had them definitely over any other team in the East. I'm interested to have the conversation of them versus whoever our next West team is. But I think my worry with the Knicks is just the depth, right? Like we've seen it flame out before in terms of guys started to get hurt and they didn't have the depth there. It's even more concerning this year in terms of what are you getting? Like, let's just even say Deuce. Let's count Deuce into it. That's 6. What else is there? I mean, I guess Knicks fans would tell you Precious. I'm not sure how that looks for a playoff run in multiple series. Maybe he does. Maybe I continue to undersell Precious Achiuwa, and maybe I'm going to learn from that. But that starting 5 is incredible. They're awesome. You have 2 all-NBA players in Brunson and Karl Anthony Towns. Bridges has really figured it out. The shooting percentages look good. OG, obviously Josh Hart, like triple-double watch every night, seemingly. I'm a little nervous defensively. What can they really lock in? Can those wings really hold it down in a way that makes up for everything that Brunson and Cat are not? And then can they just get the timely bench play that they need? Maybe Hook Porty figures it out and is able to give them 8 minutes a night or something. I don't know, but that is probably my biggest thing. And I realize in the playoff, the rotations shrink and all of that. I get it. I still worry about that. They just don't have as many options as some other teams do with what they can do with their lineup.
I agree, and I don't know that we need to dive a whole lot deeper than that. We're up to number 6 now. This is where we get fun. I have the Lakers.
Interesting. Okay. I do not.
I get it. I'm not going to sit here and argue with you for not having the Lakers super, super high. But here's the thing about the Lakers. They have Luka Doncic now.
They do.
They have Luka Doncic entering a massive fuck you season where he's going to be completely ready to just obliterate worlds in the playoffs. And he is one of the best playoff players we've ever seen. Dallas has made a conscious bet against this human being. If you think he's not going to come out and be like, fuck you guys, I'm winning a title right now, he's he's doing that 100%. That's the reality of who he is as a human being. He is hyper competitive. Now, you look at what they've done recently, the Lakers, right? They're sitting here at 31-19. If you look up and see where they were January 20th, they were 22-18. They have won 9 of their last 10 games. Some of those wins have been better than others, right? They beat the Wizards in that run. They won at Charlotte. They beat the Wizards again. They've had some easy ones there. They lost to the Sixers, which God knows, right? They've also beaten the Knicks on the road. They've beaten the Warriors twice. They have beaten the Pacers. They have beaten the Boston Celtics in that time on January 23rd. The way that this team is defending right now has completely changed things. The only reason I don't have them at number 4 at this point is because I would like to see if they can keep up this defensive energy and intensity with Luka, Luka's obviously a huge upgrade in what they're doing. But I worry about if you bring Luka in, do you still have like the manic energy defensively that they're bringing every single night right now in every single game? I think they do, which is why I have them at freaking number 6 on this thing right now. I like, they're what, 5th in the Western Conference, and I have them 6th in the entire league, and have ranked 3 Eastern Conference teams ahead of them. So I have them 3rd in the Western Conference right now.
I mean, they're 5th in the West, only a half game back of Houston and a game and a half back of Denver. So it's not like they're in the play-in or something.
I want to see more of like who's going to handle the ball, Luka and LeBron, or Austin Reeves, who, by the way, just had 45, 8, and 8, like was unbelievable this weekend. I want to see more of just how they make all of these structures work. I think they're a big question mark once Luka gets into the mix there. But their ceiling is it is extremely high when you have Luka and LeBron James playing with each other, being able to play off of one another. Luka particularly, I'm guessing the way that this will work is Luka is going to play on the ball just about the majority of the time, and then they'll have LeBron play as like the secondary and play off the ball, and him just like cutting everywhere and being able to fly and process and make these decisions. Like, I don't know. I think this has a chance to be freaking awesome.
I agree. I was not willing to put them. I thought about it. I truly, as I got into this next tier, like I felt pretty good about my top 4. I felt pretty good about the Knicks being fairly high. And then the rest of these teams, like I kind of bounced around. The reason I ended up lower, and they are in my top 10, is all of the things you just said. What is it going to look like? Because while I think Luka Doncic is incredible, Austin Reeves had 45, 8, and 8 with Luka and LeBron not on the court. So now, and listen, I think Austin Reeves can adjust to whatever role is asked of him, but it is going to be
super high IQ basketball player.
He is, but it is going to be an adjustment. His shots are going to come differently than what they were when it was LeBron and AD. Do I think Luka and LeBron are going to figure it out? Do I have major concerns there? I do not, but it is going to be different. And then on down the line, it's going to be different for everybody. And so I do think it could take a little bit of time. Luka has also missed a lot of time, and with this calf injury. And so I wonder, what will it look like immediately? Will he be able to play 30 games? Like, how many of the next 30 games is he going to be able to play? Is he going to have to rest here and there? How, like, on top of things, and this isn't me, I'm not trying to do the same thing the Mavericks did. I'm just saying anybody coming off an injury and missing as much time, it's going to take some time. I guess my thing is I would like to see it for a couple weeks before I feel that kind of confidence, along with I have real concerns defensively. Like I just do. Maybe they have the defensive mind there on staff that they get into a series and they can use their pieces to figure it out. Maybe that's going to be there. But I worry about the center position. I worry about things defensively. And while I think long-term offensively, this is going to be so much fun, maybe they figure it out quickly. Maybe it all clicks. But I think there's a chance that it doesn't as well. And that's why I'll wait and be late on it if that is the case.
So I totally understand that. And I don't think that you're wrong necessarily to think that way. But the defense has been really good recently. It's been really, really good. The energy, the effort, the intensity, like since Vanderbilt came back, man, like
Sure.
they have really played just like super, super aggressive, like tough physical defense. Like, but again, it changes with Luka back. Like it just gets a little bit different.
So over the last 15, they are 6th in defensive rating. If you take it to the last 10, they are 2nd in defensive rating. So just the numbers to back that up. And then if you go even last 5, they are 4th in defensive rating. So You know the funny team there that keeps showing up in all of that as well? The Portland Trailblazers.
We're gonna have to talk about the Blazers maybe later this week because you're 100% right. They're a really fun basketball team that we need to talk more about, or like to talk about more, just with their run that they're on right now. They are sneaky, like into the playoff or play-in picture now, which is
they
bizarre.
are half game back of the San Antonio Spurs, 3.5 back of the Warriors and Suns and Kings, who are tied right now at 9, 10, 11. My guy, Toumani Camara,
has been awesome. So is Denny. I have a video on Denny coming later this week too. Okay. So next, I went with, who did you have at 6?
So I have the Grizzlies.
Okay. So I have the Grizzlies at 8.
Okay. So who'd you have before them then?
I have the Pacers at 7.
Wow. Okay. Love it.
So the Pacers are a very difficult problem to solve in the playoffs, is kind of my entire thing here. If you need a super high level wing defender, they have Aaron Naismith who can just get thrown on to guys. They like to use Ben Shepherd in those situations too. Like he's been a pretty solid defender for them this season in the 20 minutes per game he plays. Andrew Nembhard, by the way, has been a really, really good defender and is an awesome basketball player. We've seen what he can do in the playoffs. Halliburton has like largely figured things out this year. The start was really bad, but if you look over his last like little run of play outside of that blip where your guy Toumani Camara just completely erased him, and by erased him, I mean he literally had 0 points in this game. Outside of that, like Halliburton has been pretty good recently, to where like I do believe in him, and you know, again, the numbers to back that up. 19 points, shooting 48, 40, 85 from the field with 8.2 assists and only 1.5 turnovers per game over his last 19 games. So Halliburton has been really, really, really good recently. Then you just look at the way that they can line up. Miles Turner is a real spacing problem at the 5.
Yes.
It is hard to guard them. They are exceptionally difficult to deal with when he is out there and when Halliburton is at full speed. Ben Mathurin is something like, I don't totally know what yet, but obviously he's shooting like 47, 35, 82 from the field, and he's like a real offensive threat. But they have Nembhard. They have Aaron Naismith to be able to come in and play super high level defense. Jarris Walker continues to like grow and give them minutes.
Interesting.
They have
interesting player.
Yeah, a lot of really
TJ McConnell
long,
pressures the paint.
If you're looking about building a playoff team, they space the floor from all 5 positions. And we haven't even talked about Siakam, who's been their best player this season.
Yeah.
But they space the floor from all 5 positions. They are switchable at the very least 2 through 4. And I think Turner does a better job out on the perimeter than what he gets credit for when he gets thrown on an island in those situations. It's not their preference, but like if he's out there, he does a pretty good job dealing with it. They do a really good job of like minimizing Halliburton's influence on the game defensively. Rick Carlisle's a fantastic basketball coach who I think we all believe in playoff series. They literally just went to the Eastern Conference Finals last season.
Sure.
This is a really good, dangerous basketball team in a playoff 7-game setting, in my opinion. Like they are going to be hard to deal with.
Yeah. I mean, I think Halliburton has to continue to be. No, let me ask you this. Do you think he has to be like what we saw of him last year, just before pre-hamstring? Or do you think what Siakam is doing is enough for them to like make this run? I guess what I struggle with is like, if Halliburton's not the best player in the series, does Siakam have to be the best player in the series? Do they just kind of do it by committee where you're talking about? What were the numbers through those series last year? Because maybe it's already been answered. Where was he? Yeah, so he wasn't like he kind of put up the numbers he's putting up now, throughout last playoffs.
Yeah.
So
like he was fine in the playoffs. Like it wasn't that different.
Yeah. Interesting.
I think he's really good. This team is going to be really tough to deal with.
Siakam has been really good. He's really impressive. The versatility of the way he scores, shooting the 3 ball really well, over 40%. He's one of my favorite forwards, like non-bigs, in terms of getting post position. They do some interesting things for him, but he'll also do a nice job like ducking in, cutting from the baseline, transition, stuff like that. Just things that a lot of guys that are matched with him aren't always ready for. Can, mid post isolate you, face up, those type of things. And then Andrew Nembhard, like I've watched him like get after Cade Cunningham, and like he's really good. He's a tough matchup for people. And so when you can throw somebody like him, and then you have the wing Siakam combination with Nesmith, Jarace Walker's interesting because he'll come in and like I've seen him be insanely disruptive defensively. Sometimes make some interesting decisions offensively, but he's figuring it out. You have a walking paint touch in McConnell. And then, as you said, Miles Turner is just as a stretch big, always causes issues for another team. I did not have them this high. Maybe I undervalued or underappreciated them in what they would look like in playoffs, but it is definitely an interesting team.
Okay. You had the Grizzlies at 6. I had them at 8. Yeah. You give me the Grizzlies pitch here. I like them. Like I'm a fan of the Grizzlies.
Yeah, I think I found myself wanting to have them even higher, to be honest with you, but I struggled with like Ja hasn't been as dominant as what we've seen in the past. And how far do I think Jaren Jackson Jr. led best player Grizzlies team can go? And then I'm also like, I love Jalen Wells, love Zach Edey, love what they've done. What does that look like in playoff series where you potentially are starting 2 rookies? So I found myself a little bit lower, but this is still a team that's top 10 in offensive and defensive rating. You talk about style of play. I mean, I've always wanted to see a team that played super fast in the regular season just continue to do it in the playoffs. Everybody says, oh, the game slows down in the playoffs. I know it does to an extent, but like I want to see what this looks like in the playoffs for a series in terms of just continuing to push and run this depth at a team. See if you can wear a team down for a series. And then the creativity offensively of the way they move and all of those things, I think it could be interesting. And it's always matchup dependent, but they may get some matchups where they just wear a team down on the defensive end. I think it would take Ja being like that level of player we saw before all of the other stuff for them to truly make a run. But that was enough for me to still have them fairly high, including the defensive end of the floor where they're very good also.
Yeah. Ability to go big, ability to go small with Jaren Jackson at the 5, or, they play super big sometimes with like Jaren Aldama and Edey out there, even occasionally. Like they'll go like really, really big. So I like that aspect of it. I just need to see them be able to create efficient half-court offense is kind of what it comes down to for me. Like I know that they're 5th in offensive rating this year. I know that they are a really, really effective basketball team on the offensive end of the court as a whole, right? But I think that, and like, honestly, the big difference for them this year versus the last time they were in the playoffs is that Jaren Jackson is like a real offensive mismatch threat now in a way that he wasn't previously, right? So it could just be that simple. Like they can create, if you switch on to, John Jaren, now you have multiple abilities to attack. It's not just, you have to have Ja attack against the switch, right? If you play big or like you have the ability to kind of hopefully attack different pressure points now that Jaren is able to create his own shot. I kind of just need to see it.
Sure.
Like it's unfair. And like they have such a funky offensive structure that we've talked about where they like kind of rotate around in terms of spacing and like they kind of make sure that everything, stays status quo. I think it might really, really work in the playoffs. I'm not dismissing that. I also want to see it, I guess, given that this is a team that has had problems in the playoffs before. And again, Jaren is way better than he was last time they got to the playoffs on offense. I do just want to see it.
And the other thing that may happen is it's a very unique offense and style to where you get into a series and maybe a team's able to lock in on it better than what they do on a night in, night out basis throughout a regular season, where it's like, okay, you show your team clips of it, you talk about it, but then they continue to lose guys off ball, moving and cutting, and you give up transition because even after a make, they're going to push the ball. And then you get in the series and it doesn't actually wear the team down. The team is just much more locked into it, right? Like you show them all of those things. I think that's where it'll be fascinating. Does this style of offense really work, or does it actually end up not because a team scouts it and is more prepared for it throughout a series? And we know that's part of the playoffs, right? Is you hone in and lock in on those things that teams do really well. And that's why I think it does come down to, does Jaren's offense translate to the playoffs, and can Ja be more than what we've seen in the regular season, right? Like if you look at his playoff numbers for his career, the raw numbers at least are actually pretty good for Ja, just the averages and all of that. But it's 7 more points per game than what he's averaging right now during this regular season. He's going to have to take another step, I think, offensively for them to be this level of a team.
I agree. Okay. So I just want to kind of zoom through a few other teams here to finish up.
Sure.
So who did you have next? I'll just kind of give you the
I'll go. I had the Bucks, Wolves, Clippers, Lakers, Rockets were the rest of my list.
Bucks, Wolves, Clippers, Lakers, Rockets. Okay. So this is amazing because I have the Warriors like in this next group.
Okay. Love it.
I don't feel great about it, to be clear. I don't have them next, to be clear. Like I have the Rockets next. And then I have the Bucks. And then I have the Warriors.
Okay.
And then I have the Mavericks after that. Like, so what? That'd be 9, 10, 11, 12 for me there. The Rockets, like my issue is I really just need to see them execute in the half court on some level. We're already starting to see that like break down a little bit here and there in recent games. Obviously, like the reason they've been losing recently isn't necessarily just the offense. As I think Ime Udoka mentioned recently, he was very frustrated with the team's defensive performance against the Knicks. They also gave up a ton of points against the Timberwolves. And then that game against Dallas was also quite frustrating, I think, defensively as well for them, where they gave up 116 and then they gave up 120 to Memphis too. So like, I think the defensive energy has kind of waned maybe a little bit. But the thing that I will say is like their athleticism and ability to just like overwhelm a team, like that might happen in the playoffs. I can't get them to where I have them in like the top 8 or anything like that, but they are like super athletic at the very least. And then we get to like the other teams in, this little group that I brought up, right? I mean, like I'm just fascinated to talk about the Warriors on some level here, but the Warriors having Jimmy Butler is like a massive addition for them.
Sure.
He allows them to do so many different things with their lineup constructions now that they just weren't able to do before, frankly. So I think that them being able to like bring out Jimmy, have a secondary creator out there with Steph, with Draymond. And then the question for me is like, can you get Kuminga on the court? Maybe, maybe not. But okay, maybe this elevates the other guys on the court now who don't necessarily have to be super high level creators a decent amount of the time, right? I think that having Jimmy is like an enormous lift for their half court offense. And I think the ability to like run different like split actions with Draymond, Jimmy, and Steph, and run different, mid post actions in addition to the split actions with Jimmy there, and then being able to run like the 1-4 ball screens with Draymond and Steph, and being able to flip those actions, and then having Jimmy on the weak side, being able to cut and being able to move off the ball. I don't know, so Basketball Genesis brings this up in the comments, like in a series against the Rockets, the Warriors have the two best players on the court.
Agreed. So
in a series against Memphis. Would you take Jimmy or would you take Jaren in a playoff series right now?
Probably Jimmy.
It's close, right? Like,
this is a fair
I don't know,
point.
like a pissed off Jimmy too, that he's been kind of disrespected this year.
It's a fair point. Yeah. Interesting. What I found is like
with Indiana too, like they have the two best players in a
Oh.
playoff series against Indiana.
no question.
Like in a series against, not against Denver, not against Oklahoma City, not against the Lakers, against the Clippers, I would say yes, they have the two best players in that series, unless Kawhi's fully healthy. If Kawhi's fully healthy, then they don't. But would you rather have Ant or Jimmy in a playoff series? It's close.
The Wolves have been playing really well.
They have been.
Butler, yeah, like those two guys. I think where I struggled with the Warriors was like, what's the rest of it? Like, I love Quentin Post.
Idea.
I was pushing the Quentin Post pre-draft, but like Quentin Post is starting multiple games for this team right now. So, which is interesting, but and we've talked about like, what's Kuminga look like for this team? Pods has figured it out a little bit recently. His most recent games, he's played better.
He was really good against the Bulls.
Yeah.
He was.
So I'm interested to see how it looks. They're another team. I want to see how it looks and how it all comes together.
Quentin Post starting center in the NBA is going to be like an all-timer if he ends up like in the playoffs and doing what he did against the Bulls. It'd just be amazing. For people who didn't watch the Bulls Warriors game with Jimmy Butler, Quentin Post had 18 points on 7 of 10 from the field, including 4 of 7 from 3. And then they started Buddy Hield with this group as well, which I think is probably the right play, just to have like another shooter out there for sure. We'll see if it's Looney, if it's Moses Moody, if it's Quentin Post. Like, do they just go small with Draymond at the 5 at times? Obviously, Kuminga is like a whole other ball game here, and Kuminga is, currently not, didn't play in that game. He has this little ankle injury that he's dealing with now for the next, I think, like another week. It seems like is what the idea is, but
here's another, just something to consider as well with some of these teams, like the Warriors compared to the Wolves, right? Right now, like the Warriors' path is really tough in terms of, you know what I mean? Like, not just they're 11th, not only that, but even if they were 10th, you got to go win 2 games. And then here's the Oklahoma City Thunder first round, right? As opposed to now the Timberwolves would get the Nuggets first round. So that's a tough matchup still. But I think I looked at some of that as well, of just in terms of like coming from where a team like them are. And then I will say with the Mavericks, I'm just not sure the Mavericks are going to be healthy, right? I mean,
totally.
2 of their 3 best players aren't, 2 of their at least 4 most important players aren't healthy right now and aren't going to be for another month probably. And Lively and AD, right? I mean, right? Yeah. We'd say that's 2 of their 3 or 4 most important players. So who knows where they end up again, record-wise, play in, and then how healthy those guys are come playoff time in general.
Yeah, so the Warriors are currently 1.5 games behind Dallas in 8. They are 3 games behind the Clippers in 7 and 3.5 games behind the Timberwolves in 6. I find it hard to believe that they'll catch the Timberwolves in 6th.
Yeah,
I think is where I'm at, but like not impossible.
No.
I mean, there's 30 games left in the season. Like all the difference there is like 20 and 10 versus 17 and 13. Like that's totally plausible.
Sure.
Yeah, I mean, It's tricky. It's a hard one. The Clippers, obviously, like it just comes down to Kawhi for me. If Kawhi's not on the court, then they're going to be out in the first round. If Kawhi's on the court, then they get really fun and really interesting to me.
Yeah, it's really interesting if he's healthy with what James and Norm have done, and then if Bogdan turns back the clock and is different than what we've seen so far this year. Like, just interesting roster with the way they play defense, and then if they find that scoring.
So the Timberwolves, I mean, you've mentioned that they've played really, really well recently, and I certainly don't disagree with that. I mean, they were sitting here at 22-21 on January 20th after losing a game to the Grizzlies, and right now they're 30-23. They've won 7 of 9 recently, and those wins include a win against Dallas on the road, beating Denver, a win against Phoenix on the road. They did lose to Washington in that time, bizarrely, but they did have that win against Houston, and they have the win against Portland recently on Saturday, which, with how Portland is playing right now, that's a really good win. I do think that they look better. I just don't totally trust it yet, I think is where I'm at.
I mean, what's hard with it is it's like I watched them without Julius Randle, and I'm like, this makes sense. This makes so much more sense with Naz Reid in the starting lineup. And it's like, okay, well, then what do you do with Julius moving forward? But I feel like Ant has found his rhythm. He's been getting to the free throw line more. Feels like recently Naz makes sense in the starting lineup. I feel like Jaden McDaniels is starting to find his confidence and flow offensively as well. We've talked about Nickeil Alexander Walker a lot. They still have Gobert. Like again, it's a lot of the same tier for me. It's just like I've watched the last couple times I've watched, I thought Ant looked really, really good. I thought the team looked made more sense and looked better. I don't know what they do with Julius. I mean, it'd be nice to be like, okay, like you run the non-Ant minutes and see how that goes. I don't know if that ends up working out or not. Also, shout out Jalen Clark, because I know Timberwolf fans are going to want to hear him mentioned.
Yeah.
Playing really, really good basketball right now. Really good defender, always has been. And right now, making shots, cutting along the baseline, like doing all those off-ball offensive things as well.
Yep. And then Rob Dillingham as well. I have a video coming on Rob Dillingham that GMAC will be editing at some point very soon. Final team is just the Bucks here. Look, like I'm just not a Kuzma guy. Like I'm not a believer in it right now. I don't think he's playing well. I didn't think he played super well in the first 2 games that we've seen him play in Milwaukee. I'm not a buyer on that one.
I'm with you. I mean, me having the Bucks where they are is a Giannis Dame thing. And it's just like those two. Giannis, again, could be the best player in the series throughout an entire playoffs. Dame is still really, really good. I think those two guys' chemistry has gotten better this year. I just don't know that they have the depth. I'm a little bit worried about how Brook Lopez would be able to work throughout an entire playoffs at his age. But it was more of a vote to those two guys.
Speaking of our fearless leader here, Andrew Claudio, it's time for some trivia.
GMAC, you are set up for this one to be a struggle.
Oh boy. Didn't make life easy for you, apparently, Andrew.
I did
Why?
not.
What did I do?
Nothing. It wasn't your fault. I've just been waiting to play this game for so long. I said, screw it, and we're going to play it. Okay?
Okay. I'm ready.
Right. Okay. So I'm going to give you a university, and you are going to tell me the current NBA players from said university. Some of these I will ask for all of the players. Some of these I will ask for only a couple.
Do 2 ways count?
Sure.
I mean, like in your listed answers, do you have 2 ways there?
Yes, potentially.
Okay. Just checking. So like if you say Boston College, so I guess Quentin just got converted, but like
yeah.
Did he get converted?
Yeah, 2 ways would be on it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. let's see how this goes. Sam, we're going to start with you. I need 2 of the 3 current NBA players from Arizona State.
James Harden.
Yep.
And who will be the second one? Who will be the second one? Okay. Why is my brain breaking? I'm like really running through here. Okay, so I have a name now. I'm trying to think if he's on a two-way or not. Oh, I'm an idiot. I'm not even going to say the third one. Oh,
idea.
I literally, this Arizona State came to Southern California and I sat down in their hotel and interviewed Lou Dort while he was at Arizona State. Like, it's obviously Lou Dort.
There we go. Who was your third?
Obviously.
Yeah, the third one, I guess, is, so I was going to say Christopher was the third
Yep.
one.
Josh Christopher on a two-way with Miami. Yep. Okay. GMAC. No, you're going to be okay. I'll make the game a little easier. California. I need you to name me one of 2 players from California. I promise you can do it.
Like the whole state or the actual University of Cal, like UCLA?
Cal Berkeley.
Okay. And UCLA is Cal Berkeley, right? There's not like
No,
another
no.
college? Okay.
No. California, not UCLA.
Just one player that went to Cal?
One player that went to Cal.
You got this.
You got this.
Do I?
Yeah.
It's an all-star. Like there's an all-star level player that went to Cal.
Oh, wait, no. Guys, I know nothing about college. This is like showing my man. I rooted for the Chiefs so hard yesterday, and this is how I get repaid.
Well, it was your fault they lost then. So this is why
you know what? Everything I root for loses, so maybe it is my fault. Shout out to the Lions. I'll say Russell Westbrook. I know that's UCLA, but that's not it. This is where Sam gets the easiest win of all time.
Sam, no. Sam, to steal 1 point, has to give me both because he should be able to get both.
Okay.
Yeah. So like the one is an all-star. It's Jaylen Brown.
Jaylen Brown.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. And then the second one was a first-round pick last year, and it's Jalen Tyson.
Jalen Tyson. Yes, sir.
That's what happened there.
I've been holding this one for so long. I'm sorry, GMAC.
You're good. You're good.
It's so rude.
Okay. Sam, I need one Georgetown Hoya in the NBA.
Georgetown. There is only one?
Whenever I did this, there was only one.
Georgetown.
I guess if you are able to come up with a name that is not this name, I will look that up quickly and give you your points. But
so yeah, this is not the guess, but Yurtsevin is not in the NBA right now. Greg Monroe is not in the NBA right now. I don't think Otto Porter is hanging out in the NBA right now either. What's going on here? Okay.
this is probably the hardest one.
This feels difficult to me. Georgetown. Okay, I'm like running through the past like few iterations of Georgetown basketball. Thomas Sorber is not in the NBA yet.
That he is not.
Devontes Smith Rivera did not make the NBA. Okay. But like, okay, so like I have a name. I don't know if he's in the league right now is the issue. He's in the slam dunk contest. My name is Mac McClung.
That does not count. GMAC.
Okay.
Patrick Ewing.
It's a Houston Rocket.
Oh, it's Jeff Green. Okay. Yeah.
Jeff.
Oh, I knew that one.
Yeah.
Oh, I did know that he went to Georgetown. Okay.
Yeah.
All right, GMAC.
Is Mac McClung timeout? Is Mac McClung on a two-way? Can someone check this?
He's not, right?
I didn't think he was.
They put him on a two-way the last time, so that way he could be in the slam dunk. And then this time they just said, screw it. We'll just let him do it from Osceola.
Bryce, I have bad news.
No, he's not.
Is he really? All right. Sam gets the point.
He's on
However, will I come back in this one?
He is on a
really?
two-way.
Is he
Yeah,
really? For what
he is.
team?
The Magic.
Orlando.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Whatever. My bad. Okay. GMAC. 1 of 3 Georgia Bulldogs. This guy's also an all-star. We may have talked about him on this podcast really recently.
Yeah, I've got the one.
So you know what this makes me realize? How
What?
much you recognize this stuff just from doing like in-depth NBA draft stuff. Because like
Totally.
your NBA knowledge is second to none, GMAC, but you could care less where a player played college. It does not factor into anything you do.
Bingo. What's annoying is I used to be into college a ton. Like I covered it in college. And then once I graduated, I became no longer like I could barely watch a tournament at this point, which I get it is like game theory gospel at this point. But yeah, I'll say Jalen Carter.
I was here. Hold on. Timeout.
What?
Former number 1 overall pick.
Okay.
Fairly recently.
Wemby.
That's Paris.
I know. I know.
So the 3 are
Okay,
I
so
can give you
Sam-
all 3.
Okay. Go ahead, Sam. You got it.
Yeah, so it's Ant,
Ants,
it's Nick Claxton,
Nick Claxton.
and then the one that is like from over a decade ago is KCP.
KCP. Very good.
Yeah.
All right. I'm going to have to change the next one up for GMAC. Sam, I need 3 of the 4 Iowa State Cyclones.
3 of the 4 Iowa State Cyclones. Oh,
Yes,
God.
sir.
That one's a little tricky. So Niang is there.
Niang is there.
I'm like trying to think back to like that team as much as anything because Halliburton's one of them. Taylor Horton Tucker is one of them.
There you go.
And then who would be the 4th? Who would be the 4th? All right, fast game's a good game. Just tell me who the 4th is.
Monte Morris.
Oh yeah, it is that team too.
Wait, I could have
Niang
stolen
team.
that one.
Shut up. Okay, here we go, GMAC.
Hit me. I know where you're going with this.
I need you to name me the members of the New York Knicks that attended Villanova.
Okay. Jalen Brunson, Josh
Yes.
Hart, Mikal Bridges. If we want to go extended family, Ryan Arcidiacono. And I'm counting Dante DiVincenzo because he is still with us in our hearts.
Perfect. 4 points for GMAC. Very well done.
4. That works.
Yes.
All right.
Archie.
Sam, Memphis.
So how many?
I put here 3 of 4. I think that's going to be quite the feat.
So Jalen Duren is one of them. Precious is another one.
Yep.
Okay. 3 of 4. 3 of 4. I'm just like trying to think back through Memphis teams. It's not Joey Dorsey. I mean, like, okay. So is Wiseman theoretically still in the league because he's on that deal with the Pacers?
I have Wiseman on the list.
Yeah. And then who's the 4th?
Mine not.
Oh, okay. Yeah. I mean, my mind went to Imani Bates immediately, but Imani went to Eastern Michigan after that.
Yeah. And then
Yeah.
Quinones, I would have to look if he's on a two-way or
I'm not sure if he is or not now. Yeah. Okay. This is a wild ride. Okay.
oh man. The next one was Missouri. GMAC, any chance you could tell me one player that played at Missouri?
No. Go ahead, Sam. Can you?
Kobe Brown is one of them.
Yep.
Are there others?
There's 4.
There's 4. Okay. Drew Smith for the Heat.
Drew
Could be
Smith.
2.
Yep.
Okay. Missouri.
You're missing a very, very
Michael.
obvious.
Michael Porter Jr. is one. Jonte not in the club anymore, right?
I don't think we should. I don't think we should count Jonte. I don't think we should do that.
Okay. Who would be the 4th?
Jordan Clarkson.
Yeah, that's right. Good call.
All right. GMAC, you can get this one because one of the answers is always an answer for a trivia question. Players
Nikola
from
Jokic.
No. The other
Sorry.
guy.
Go ahead.
Good answer.
Players from Belgium. The non-best player in the NBA answer that's always a correct answer for me. We talked about him on the episode.
Wait, what?
Takes a lot of charges.
Oh, Tamani Kamara.
Tamani Kamara, very good,
Okay.
GMAC.
I
One
did
player
it.
from Belgium.
I did it, Joe. There you go.
Sam, can you name the other player from Belgium?
AJ Mitchell.
AJ Mitchell, very good. Very, very good.
Okay.
Sorry, GMAC. That was my bad. I actually,
That's cool. You wanted to reenact the Super Bowl in this trivia. That's totally. That was mean. I'm sorry.
except you're wearing green and I'm wearing red, and so
Yeah.
the roles were reversed yesterday.
It's all right. It's all right. I'll be
You
the
got-
role of Drake in this match.
You guys have no idea how big of a fit I threw yesterday after. Yeah, it was bad.
I actually do not know how big a fit you threw because I've never seen my team lose a Super Bowl, but I can empathize, and I'm very sorry. I wasn't even going to bring it up, and then Prize Picks just created the opportunity, and seeing Sam go into like, you could have picked this eagle and this eagle and this eagle and this eagle. Like, oh no. Oh no.
As long as you didn't pick Patrick Mahomes, you were okay.
No. Yeah.
That's true.
Yeah.
That's very true. Okay. I think that's all we got for today, right? We've gone
Yep.
a solid 2, a breezy 2 for the Sunday show.
Shout out.
Andrew, tell
Yes.
the people where they can find your work.
You can find my NBA work at Knicks Film School, where we're breaking down the Knicks on a wall-to-wall coverage basis. I just recorded, which is why I was late to Game Theory, a pregame pod. I guess I live streamed a pregame pod with the wonderful Caitlin Cooper, who covers the Indiana Pacers for Basketball She Wrote. Or I guess has a Patreon called Basketball She Wrote. That pod is available if you want to preview if you want to hear a preview of the Knicks matchup against the Pacers on Tuesday, featuring 2 contenders that were talked about on this very podcast. You can check that out over at Knicks Film School, our YouTube channel, iTunes, Spotify, wherever you get podcasts, newsletter, Patreon, all the above. We're breaking it down in depth. Then follow me, Andrew J. Claudio _ on all socials. And of course, Game Theory, Sam V on all socials. We got a ton of film sessions coming up this week that we put in the can because Nico Harrison did something very stupid. And here we are now getting back to the regularly scheduled content. So
How long ago did I record that Cam Boozer breakdown?
a while ago.
I
It might have
truly
been
feel like-
You haven't
know what?
posted that yet?
It was
no.
because it was the
Wow.
Friday, I think, and you were like, yeah, just post it Monday or something. And then Luka got traded
Yeah.
Saturday night. I know we're about to run, but the evolution of the Game Theory reaction to that show, because I obviously was there for the first one, and what it's become, because I heard a very good Patrick Dumont segment, that you did, talking about his quotes. And like Bryce, the Sam I got when I got home to do the emergency pod, the first reaction was like, hey, they have more information than us. Like, let's see this play out. And I was like, I was so ready to be so reckless. I was going to ask if NBA GMs are also subject to drug testing. And I was like, you know what? You're right. Let's see how this plays out. I have my skepticism, but let's see. And what it's evolved to is, how dare you? And I agree with all of it 100%.
No, like all due respect to Patrick Dumont, but I found that super disrespectful.
Yes.
Like Luka Doncic has worked his balls off to get to the NBA and to be like what he's become is like one of the 3 best players in the league. And he has to listen to this dude who's like the governor of the team, like talk about all this bullshit.
Mhm.
Like if it's look, like I say a lot of bullshit, but I back it up. Like I literally will break down the film and tell you exactly what's happening every single time. If I can't do that, I don't say it. Right.
Yeah.
That dude, that is remarkable to me. I can't believe he did that. Like if I was any player and I read those quotes, I would be fucking furious.
And to what you said, like it's hilarious that he used Shaq as the example after an entire career of Shaq, like not showing up to camp in shape, clashing with Kobe on how the best way to play like to be a leader of a basketball team is. Us saying that, hey, if he took his physical fitness seriously, he probably would be the greatest of all time, and yet he still was dominant. Yeah, it just you're allowed to talk out of your mouth instead of other parts of your body. But
yeah,
hey, Luka and the Lakers take on the Utah Jazz at 10:30 Eastern tonight.
Great. I'm excited.
Yeah.
I will watch. Bryce, tell the people where they can find your work.
Yeah, at Motor City Hoops on Twitter, on Blue Sky, Motor City Hoops Substack, where if your favorite team plays the Pistons, I will have notes and back to video, even now that I'm feeling better, on things that they did, things that I thought were cool that your team did. So check that out after a game. The Pistons Pulse podcast, if you want Pistons content for some reason. Otherwise, Game Theory podcast right here with Sam Vecenie and GM Macy.
So JJ Redick just announced the Lakers starting lineup. It is going to be Luka, Austin, LeBron, Rui, and Jackson Hayes are the 5. And they're, JJ said that he would consider starting Dorian Finney-Smith in the future, but thinks Rui has just been playing great and thinks that Dorian Finney-Smith's impact isn't affected by starting, according to Jovan. So shout out to Jovan Bua, who I just wrote a story with over on The Athletic earlier today about the Lakers and all of their many options here forthcoming on the buyout market, on whatever, market that's available from Australia, everything that we talked about earlier in this episode with Mark Williams. Go to The Athletic, read that, read all of the stuff that I wrote at the deadline, which was numerous and vast. All of those things are live. They are there. Please, by all means, go find all of that content. Subscribe to the YouTube channel, Game Theory Podcast with Sam Vecenie. Go subscribe to all of the many social media platforms, X/Twitter, TikTok, Blue Sky, Threads, Instagram, whatever you're using. Go subscribe. Game Theory Sam V. I think that's all we got. We will have to come up with a schedule because I'm going out of town for All-Star weekend and I have not told these two that yet. So we will figure out what the schedule is going to be moving forward for the show. Until next time, we'll talk soon.